Well, kia ora everybody. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar. I see that people are coming in. It's great to have you here. My name's Craig Young. I'm the CEO of Tuans, and it's my great pleasure today to welcome Jeremy Foster, who you may have come across previously in previous incarnations. He is the country manager for Tech Mahindra, and today he'll be joined with Tony Kalcina, who is the global ambassador for TM Forum, who is based in Australia. Today's webinar is about the insights on global trends that will impact the New Zealand comms market. I've seen the presentation. There is a lot of information. It is incredibly interesting, and there's a lot to cover. And I did want to let people know we are recording the session so that you will be able to go back and look at those slides again and hear what Tony has to say. And also to those of you that are watching it afterwards, because maybe you weren't able to join on the day, something came up that'll be available for you as well. We are taking Q&A, so if you have used Zoom before, you'll know there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, or if you're on an iPad, or a phone, you just got to tap the screen and you'll see the Q&A come up. We're leaving them open. You can ask anonymous. You can vote them up. That's usually a good way, because then if multiple people have the same question, it's more likely to get answered. Jeremy will look after the Q&A at the end of Tony's presentation. So it's my great pleasure to hand over to my friend and colleague, Jeremy Foster. So Jeremy, why don't you take it away?
Great. Kia ora koutou, everyone. So great to be here with you. Thanks so much for the introduction, Craig. Let's just move on to the agenda slide, and I'll quickly introduce Tony. Tony Kalcina is a global ambassador for the Telecom Management Forum across the Asia Pacific region, and I've had the pleasure to work with him on a number of different activities. And the thing I love about Tony, he brings so much energy, but also so much history. He kind of reminds me of the Gartner hype cycle of our industry, where in the early days we thought everything would be Star Trek. Eventually 3G didn't quite deliver. We got into the trough of disillusionment, and then as we start to build towards things like 4G and 5G really delivering, what else? What's going on, as technology is trying to help us, better deliver outcomes for customers and industries and so on. In the bottom left of this slide that's just up at the moment, you can see that Tony's being interviewed at Digital Transformation World only, I guess, a month ago. As he and I were reflecting on Mobile World Congress and DTW and some of the big mega trends which are impacting our industry, it just occurred to me that it'd be great to bring him down to bring a balanced perspective. What are some of those big things? What might we learn from? What are the operators investing in? What are other technology companies thinking about? And what's the context for us in New Zealand? So anyway, without further ado, you all can see this kind of stuff that we're going to crash through. It's going to be like skiing down a black piste on a ski slope and entering a forest. I'm sure we'll all come out safe and sound. And I really look forward to seeing some of those questions come through for us to talk to at the end. So with that, Mr. Kalcina, I'll hand over to you, please.
Buli kato, everyone, and thank you, Craig and Jeremy. We have an action-packed agenda, and let me begin by telling you a little bit about the TM Forum, for those that may not have heard. The TM Forum is an international global collaboration standards organization. Many of the telecom companies, and even banks and other are members of. There are 800 members and over 100,000 professionals that cover it. The purpose of the TM Forum moving forward is to help the industry evolve and change and find true value as we basically go through these major events in the world. So it is a very practical, hands-on standards body that complements the work of many others. Now, I have flown 51,000 million kilometers to attend 2 events. I've actually need to plant 64 trees if I'm going to be carbon neutral for what I've just done. Over 14 trillion in a carbon dioxide. I think it's, yes, I've done a lot of damage to the planet in bringing this to you, so hopefully it will be useful. There are 2 events I attended. The first event was in Thailand called DTW 2023. This is a Digital Transformation World 2023. It is a local event. It had over 84 speakers. About 1,200 people attended. And there were major streams, as you can see on your left here, regarding AI, data, how to grow. The key subject was, how do we grow the revenue in our industry? So there was a lot of insight. We've selected, as you saw, 6 topics from what was discussed at this seminar for you today, and what was also discussed at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. That was attended by over 88,000 people, and there were over 1,000 speakers across the 5 streams you see on your left. A lot to choose from. There are, in fact, probably about 100 topics that Jeremy and I looked at, and as when we selected the 6 that we felt would be most relevant to you and the work you're doing as an association. One of the key messages that came across in both the conferences before we move into the 6 topics was that our industry, the telecommunications industry, is actually hit a little bit of a rough patch. It's actually quite stagnant. In fact, if you look at the messaging that was at these conferences, it was a rather bleak message. If you stand back, one of the keynote speakers at the Mobile World Congress felt that maybe in 10 years' time, we won't be in business, and maybe we'll follow the path of Blockbuster, BlackBerry, and Kodak. It's an amazing wake-up call, effectively saying that our business models don't work and are not working, and we're not as relevant as we should be, despite the huge growth in digitization in the global economy. Obviously, others, as you see here, Karl Marx and Joseph Schumpeter, these are economists that have actually made observations of what happens to industry that gets stuck a little bit in a rut and in the back. So there was a general feeling that, there was a call to action. Something must be done as we move forward. So if we stand back a little bit and summarize, the perception of what was discussed as an industry, we really need to reinvent our business models. So there was a major focus on how do we, at the center of the hub of the wheel of digitization, the telecom industry that provides incredibly valuable connectivity, how does it facilitate the collaboration required for success? And one of the key topics, of course, an announcement was the announcement of the Open Gateway, and I'll get into that a little later. But that allows for collaboration between telecom companies and others in the ecosystem, technology companies, partners, customers. And obviously, one of the key aspects of what the telecom industry does very well is connectivity as in its backbone, and how to leverage that for Industry 4.0 and Web 3.0. There was a lot of, focus on the radical changes that are required, and more importantly, that the call to action meant that we had to do something different now. So if you stand back a bit, there are obviously many players in our industry. The industry as a whole has started to create these layers of specialization. If you look at the center here, the infraco companies that have the towers, the fiber, the netco companies that provide the network, the service companies that sit on top and provide connectivity as a service. But now the birth of platform players. And there are a few examples of these platform players, and even the targeted end-to-end solution providers and how they move forward. The market of connectivity from over $1 trillion to 10 trillion is an incredible growth opportunity. But the key message that I can report back to you to the association is that it's all about collaboration, openness, and how to achieve that in a predictable manner. So the general message was that as an industry, if you look at this, the traditional telcos that have empowered, the phone and communications and data need to move up the food chain. They need to evolve. They need to become more digital in their capabilities. In fact, they need to move away from being telcos and become techcos. And that's the very first topic we'll get into, the techco, which is an organization that continuously evolves and uses the language of software to basically innovate. So that's a very important point. Another key message was, a lot of work is happening. And a lot of investment is going on in our industry, in collaboration, in digital transformation. But the general message was that the approaches that we're taking aren't necessarily working, not only in our industry, but even in the overall global economy. As you saw here, some of these studies have quoted the amount of money that is actually lost by failed approaches. There's a lot of lessons to learn as we move forward in this call to action. There are a lot of things that were discussed regarding, why these path to digitization to TechCo are failing, and there are a few listed here. Centric to this is people, it's talent, it's mindset, it's willingness to take risk, And we'll get into that as we go through the 6 major topics. So now let's begin. Let's start with telco to techco transition. This is a journey that most telcos were reporting as a path forward for them. And I've got a few slides taken from their presentations to present to you in terms of what that means. But effectively, it means to be more agile and more flexible in the way in which you present solutions to the customer. You're real time. You create things, that can be delivered to the customer in hours versus months. And you have the flexibility to explore what the customer needs and innovate and take risks. You move quickly, you fail quickly, you adjust. It's a totally different mindset. But most telecom companies and players that presented at both these conferences actually did say that they're on the journey to becoming a techco. It was the key message and the key capability. But they also recognized that in order to become a techco, effectively a company that is a continuous innovator and really maps the needs of the customer and not just provide connectivity, it's a very high bar to climb. And especially with us as a telecom industry, we're sort of stuck with ways of working that are probably a little dated, as you saw here. But having said that, there were some good presentations of a number of people that went forward. This is an example, and of course, these presentations lasted typically half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'm not doing them justice, but I just want to give you a flavor. If you do want these presentations, please reach out to Craig, and we will organize to get you the presentations in a lot more detail that were presented at these conferences. But here is a telco in Thailand called AIS. They are going through the process of transforming from a telco to a cognitive techco, as they call themselves, to be far more real-time, interactive, personalized. It is, and they've explained how they're doing that and the challenges that they're undertaking. But there are examples throughout the world in all of these conferences of people who are now in that journey, some more advanced than others, some making a number of mistakes, and they share the lessons learned. This is one from Malaysia called Yes. They consider themselves as the first and best provider in Malaysia with an all IP network, fully virtualized, and they had some very impressive demos. The biggest, telco, one of the biggest in the world that did the presentation, it was quite insightful in their journey, was Jio. Hundreds of millions of subscribers that they have. They presented the way they have undertaken this transformation and have become a techco as a company. And a key part of this, of the approach they've taken is a bottoms-up approach with getting the technology layers, the stack, the data, leveraging the data, and then undergoing a top-down exploration of what the end customers, both consumer and enterprise, require. So they are doing partnerships and, of course, being part of the Reliance Group, involved in a cross section of the economy. They are basically executing some great case studies and some great examples of what to do. But the key message as the next presentation, this slide was taken from Docomo in Japan. Their secret to success is co-creation with the industry. How to create endgame open APIs and empower innovation by collaboration and co-creation with the industry. And that's a key message that came out of that presentation to report back. One of the, I think, most interesting insights I found regarding IoT was this presentation by StarHub out of Singapore, that they've come to the realization that, the best revenue to be earned sits above them. This is in the area of IoT consulting, integration, applications. So moving up the food chain and collaborating with players already there is a key part of the realization. This is over 50, almost 60% is in the value add, not necessarily the connectivity. Other telcos providers that gave some nice presentations was, for example, Axiata. They explained what this change meant to them, both in terms of the changes in ways of working, how they're re-engineering their technology, how they're changing the culture of their people. But one of the most important parts that they reported in yellow here was the API, how they're creating an open API for the industry to leverage their investment, the billions of dollars of investment. Another message that came across in both these conferences was the ability to innovate. Many players have done away with their internal R&D teams, and therefore their ability to be proactive innovators and taking R&D has been a little limited. NTT explained the intent they had, the if you like, the focus they had on internal R&D and creating innovative solutions that almost are peer-to-peer with what the technology companies have outside, so they can speak the right language. They have a lot of focus on technical investment of people that actually can program and create this innovation. Remember, software is the new language for business, and having architects and people that know about Agile is key moving forward. But there were also other messages. For example, from T-Mobile, their approach in an evolutionary way is they came to the realization that they were involved in a very, and I'm just quoting, a very stupid, broken, and arrogant industry. This is a slide taken straight out of the presentation. And their belief is that they need totally to transform those business models, do away with the nonsense of international roaming and all the tricks and traps and breakages, as he quoted. No contract family plans, and moving forward, all of the things I guess some of the telcos already in New Zealand are undertaking. But they explain the need to change. This is not a leapfrog, but effectively it's an evolution to get to where they're going. A lot of examples, for example, on what that meant. I mean, from the Philippines and Globe, they had an innovative solution where they are actually solving the problem of their customers, their community. They need to send money, pay money, they need to save money, they need to borrow money. So they've actually created the end experience for those, leveraging all that technology up until the app. Also, quite impressive was the work that Telstra is doing. If I can put that on the top layer, remember that the layers I showed you before, these are the highest layer, the ability to create a health solution. This is something that is a targeted solution for hospitals and primary care, age and disability. They've done some amazing work by creating a business unit that collaborates and provides those solutions through partnerships in the market. So that was quite impressive. And there was an incredible number of presentations on 5G use cases. But there was a message as well that open 5G and Open RAN was maybe not ready for mainstream. There were some players who were quite adamant that it was ready and they had example. Others said, look, they need too much internal integration for that to make it happen. So they're waiting for it to evolve a bit more before they jump on board. One of the other aspects that was quite prevalent in the creation of a techco was the importance of talent and keeping talent and ensuring that talent, that's the key oil. Their ability to innovate, their ability to create the technology and release it in hours versus months was a key part. So overall, lots of presentations, lots of discussions about the evolution, the journey from a telco to a techco, to collaboration, to openness, through the open gateway, through standard APIs and various other things. So that's an important message I'd like to leave you behind. If you're interested in any of those, do reach out to Craig or Jeremy or myself, and we'll forward you, I guess, the double-click presentations. There are thousands of presentations behind this, as you saw earlier. Let's move on to the next topic, the autonomous network, and the importance of creating the infrastructure that doesn't have humans involved in it, fully automated. And one of the key aspects of that is having a telecom network and a backbone, if you like, that is zero touch, zero weight, zero trouble, zero friction. And that is, of course, the utopia. But there are a number of presentations from many telcos that are undertaking this journey. And obviously, this needs a lot of the infrastructure vendors who are basically tied into this journey of providing that. If that's the case, then the real-time capability of what sits on top will be amazing as an industry to exploit, especially as you have access to that through the open APIs. One of the key messages about autonomous networks I like to share with you was the whole concept of intent and the applicability of AI to intent. So what is intent? Intent is you create a telecom network that effectively drives the digital global economy by intent. You don't tell it how to do it, you tell it what the outcome is required, what the SLAs are, and it automatically adjusts itself to meet those SLAs, whether it be in latencies, in throughput, availability, whatever the intent is. the network has the intelligence to learn how to get there and achieve there. Very important concept. Intent, autonomous networks, big topic in both conferences. The biggest, I guess, announcement in the keynote of Mobile World Congress was the Open Gateway, as I mentioned earlier. This is a Camara initiative, which is a global collaborative initiative that was put together through GSMA to define a gateway into the telecom, billions of dollars of investment that telcos have made in each country, to provide the ability to collaborate, the ability to create incredibly valuable and innovative solutions. So the Camara initiative, the announcement, and that's now, you can collaborate, you can work with it, you can download software from it. Very, very important and a key part, I guess, of that autonomous network moving forward. Let me now quickly move to the third topic that Jeremy, Craig, and I thought you would be of interest, and that's the whole concept of the metaverse. Now, there's a lot of hype involved in metaverse, but what does that mean to all of us on this call? There were a number of presentations of what the metaverse is doing today. And fundamentally, it's not a standalone technology. It is a technology that is just one tool in the toolkit. It needs to be part of an ecosystem of other capabilities to create a better, if you like, solutions for both enterprise and consumer markets. And there are a few examples, dozens of presentations. I've just taken this one here as an example. This was a presentation by Accenture, where they spoke about the use of metaverse as a workplace collaboration tool, and how that may improve the way in which we work together, collaborate together. There was also a very, very fascinating demonstration and presentation by Autonomous on the world's first cognitive city, and how they've created, if you like, the predictive, proactive smart cities that emulate both in the real world as well as in the meta world, that coexistence. So it's a very impressive demonstration and presentations by them. So that's metaverse. The fourth topic, I guess, we wanted to discuss with you in today's seminar. And remember, this workshop is an interactive workshop, and we've left a bit of time at the end to address these topics, as well as any other topics you may feel irrelevant for New Zealand today as an industry. Is, of course, the fourth topic is the environmental, social, and governance, ESG topic. Now, there were many presentations on the importance of climate and how we as an industry, effectively, if you look at the amount of energy that we actually consume in the global economy, the amount of energy we consume as a technology, IT&T, it's equivalent to the energy that is actually consumed by transportation. That was an amazing thing to learn. There's a lot of power being used by us as to facilitate, if you like, our modern society. And therefore, we do need to take some care in how we use that power. And NTT Docomo was one presentation I particularly liked in terms of how they're using R&D and how they're executing the energy saving and how they're measuring success in energy saving and how they ensure that their providers are in fact climate friendly. So I've just selected this presentation, but there were, as I said earlier, dozens of presentations and case studies and things and initiatives that many players are taking, both from a vendor community, a customer community, as well as, of course, a telecom community. The other topic that we wanted to discuss with you today was cybersecurity. This is a particularly important topic. If you had to think of three major topics of conversation, they were effectively the importance of climate and energy, the move to cloud and the use of cloud, whether it be private or public cloud. Cybersecurity was the third one. And if you think about this problem, it's very topical all over the world today. In fact, many would say it's out of control. If you look at all the money that is lost, if you like, in a year in cybersecurity, and you were to put it into a global economy, it would be the third largest economy. This is according to a study by the World Organization. And what they've said is effectively that it would be third largest after the US and China, if you see the little diagram on the side. And it represents the greatest transfer of economic wealth in the history of mankind. This is people that take money from the good guys and it put away to the bad guys. And it's more than the damage caused by all natural disasters in a year. And by 2025, the estimation, it's 10.5 trillion. So it is a big problem. In Australia, it's estimated to be 100 billion loss. So the question is, what are we doing about that? And more importantly, what are we as the ITT industry doing about this? So there was a lot of conversation about this. And one of the initiatives that was discussed was the Telstra Cleaner Pipe initiative. This is based on BT's Clean Pipe. In fact, in one of the presentations, we had the head of BT Security. Now, the head of BT Security made an interesting comment. He said that in the UK, BT is the accountable entity when it comes to safety in the internet, when it comes to minimizing cybercrime. They in fact, it went the wrong way. They were in fact accountable, and he is responsible for the security of the network, the security of the IT systems, and the physical security of all of the assets of in one place in BT. And he basically, due to the regulatory changes that were made in the UK, he basically became accountable. So he's created a number of programs and initiatives in order to ensure that. And that generated the whole concept of the BT Clean Pipe. Now, Telstra has implemented the Cleaner Pipe concept. This is an AI-driven technology that looks out for all the scams and all of the issues that affect both voice networks, SMS, as well as data. And it's a very clever system. It's called not Clean Pipe like BT, it's called Cleaner Pipes. Cleaner Pipe because they're obviously very realistic that it's very hard to remove all in most. And if you look at the ad that Telstra is now running in Australia, it's actually a family being supported by a SWAT team, and that SWAT team is what the Cleaner Pipe offers them. A key topic of conversation was who is accountable? Who should be accountable inside a digital economy, a global economy, a national economy for ensuring that there is, in fact, a minimization of cybercrime? And there was a lot of conversation about that. And in some countries, it's already legislated. In others, like in Australia, there is a call for interest to see what should be the incentives and the regulation changes to ensure that the amount of money that is lost by scams and cybersecurity is in fact minimized. And there is a whole topic to cover that. But fundamentally, what was discussed was that the telcos do have a sense of accountability and a responsibility and duty of care to ensure that in their highways they are not carrying these criminals, and they need to identify them, they need to stop them. But it doesn't just stop there. Also, the enterprises have an accountability to improve what software they run and how they follow their current processes to safeguard, for example, in the case of banks, to safeguard the money that they keep safe for all of us. And there's duty of care on the enterprises, the banks and others to keep that safe. There's also accountability on individuals to basically be responsible for how their persona is utilized in the economy. And that's the whole issue of biometrics and how biometrics can be used to minimize this is also a topic of conversation. Very important topic. Cybersecurity that was discussed, and we wanted to highlight that to you in the session this morning. The other topic, this afternoon, the other topic that we wanted to really highlight to you was the generative AI, effectively, known one instance of it as ChatGPT. What impact that is having in everyone's conversation at both these conferences, and obviously there were a number of presentations on how people are using generative AI to help their today business. But the general conclusion about ChatGPT, and generative AI is that it is a major tool for all of us. It is almost the wheel of our century. And we need to learn how to leverage this. We need to learn how to basically focus on what we do and maybe do it better by the help of the tools such as ChatGPT and others that are in the market today. And there are a few examples there that was discussed, both in improving customer service, the running of network management, the whole thing of an autonomous networks, intent-driven networks, the sales and marketing, and where that can help in terms of personalization, next best actions, fraud detection. Were just an example of some of the examples that were discussed during these sessions. So fundamentally, as a set of topics, these 6 topics that we walked through very quickly today were indicative of the conversations that were had in both these conferences. And what we wanted to do now, I guess, if I can just, maybe open it up and hand back to Jeremy, we wanted to go through and provide you a little summary of the impact of these to New Zealand. And then we wanted to open up for conversations and questions on maybe the impacts. And I'll quickly summarize the 6 topics that I went through. And remember, the whole thing was set under the umbrella of a call to action, that we do need to change our business models. We do need to evolve. Otherwise, the classical telco could well follow Tupperware and others as great capabilities of the past, but were not able to basically handle change and evolve to what's required moving forward. So the whole theme of telco to techco, how you move from a high quality utility provider to a software innovator, were of major importance. The autonomous network and how the autonomous network with intent is empowering digital transformation is a key part, I guess, of the topic. Metaverse and how that is not an isolated solution, but effectively a key part of the ecosystem, and it's practical and can be applied today, was another takeaway. And of course, the best practices for environmental, social, and governance, ESG, and to support global warming, and in fact mitigate against global warming and address the climate issue, very high up there in the topics of conversation. Cybersecurity and the role of the telco as an accountable entity to ensure that the privacy, the crimes is minimized, was also in the spotlight, all the way from one end of the spectrum where people and telcos are legislated to be accountable, to ones where there are conversations about how to create incentives to make them more accountable, because someone has to pay for this at the end. And the last bit, of course, the most exciting bit of technology was effectively the wheel of our century, how we leverage ChatGPT to create this journey of change and transformation. These were the 6 topics we had for you today. And what we'd like to do now is, maybe if I can hand over to Jeremy to walk us through some of the discussions we had planned.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Well, let's just keep the summary slide up, because I think it's a great placeholder. And I think I promised everyone that you're skiing down a black pist through a forest would all come out okay. So thank you so much for navigating us through that. I'm sure everyone else is just double checking that their arms and legs are still intact after crashing through such a huge amount of information and with so much energy. Now we've got the questions are open. I can see we've got a question from Ralph Hofflich around telecoms monetizing the metaverse. We'd love to have any other questions from any of you. I think we've got 70 or so, or 68, I think, last time I looked, attendees. So please, if you've got any questions, let's throw them into the Q&A or the chat, and we can use those to bounce around. This word monetizing, I think, if I can just reframe that question, and Craig, please join in this conversation as well, around the metaverse. I prefer to think of the concept of value. Like, how do the telcos represent value in these places, such as metaverse or others? And I don't think that metaverse is too much different compared to, for example, that IoT value stack that you showed around, where is really smarts happening and what's the connectivity piece. But Tony, what are your reflections around, the telco role in metaverse? And now, as we think of it, not as something isolated, but part of an ecosystem, what are your reflections on telco's role in making that successfully useful to people, such that they'll spend some money, such that the telecom operators can, earn some revenue? What are your reflections?
This sort of almost brings you back to a few other similar groundbreaking technologies that we've had over the years. I recall ISDN. ISDN was a technology that was going to revolutionize the way we talked and empower enterprises. And ISDN was a technology looking for a problem. It wasn't the problem looking for a solution. Let me explain that. I think one of the things that we, as an engineer, a telecom engineer myself, we are a little guilty on making technology our religion, and then looking for ways in which we can make money out of that technology. And one of the key lessons I think that we have observed, and the speakers have actually said, is that let's put that in our toolkit. That is a means to an end. What is the end? The end is actually focusing on the problem. And what is the problem? What are the problems that enterprises have today? Can I contribute to solving that problem? Can I contribute to solving the problem of consumers and different communities that need to achieve certain outcomes? Let me understand the problem first, and then I'll go to my toolkit and see whether I need metaverse to be part of that solution, or whether I need to collaborate with another partner to solve that problem, or be part of an ecosystem and a partnership of people to solve the problem. Because if you start at the top and work your way down, you will see that metaverse will be monetized. It is a powerful technology. It's a little bit like generative AI, as an example, ChatGPT. They're all building blocks in our toolkit, but let's not look at our toolkit first and try to sell the tools. Let's look at solving the problems. And it's not a problem that can be solved just by us. This is what I guess Telstra has demonstrated with Telstra Health. It's all about collaboration, and it's all about understanding, if you are a retiree, you're in a retirement, what sort of issues do you have? The scripts that need to be provided. Let me think about, how do I get that to you in a way that empowers you? So that's what I would say, if to answer your question, Ralph, that, metaverse is just a powerful tool in our toolkit. Let's now focus on the problems, and let's focus on the customer, and then work our way down.
Great. And I think, for those of you that are wondering, I'm sure there's a lot of you, ISDN, Integrated Services Digital Network, just showing my age there. We've been talking about digital for some time. Even now, we're talking about digital transformation as being a challenge. We've got another question, which I'll pull into a second. Just thinking about themes as you've looked through your career, Tony, and you think about, what has changed and what has stayed the same. Is there maybe one theme that you can think of that still eludes us beyond what you've already shared?
Oh, absolutely. I think what has stayed the same is the problem. I still recall, I'm going back to the 80s. We had to improve customer care. I remember the systems we ran in the 80s. We didn't actually keep the name of the customer in our mainframes. We just had a number. We didn't need the customer name. They were just a number to us. And then when deregulation hit us in the late 80s, especially in Australia, in the international side initially, it basically said, oh my goodness, we have to know the customer a little better. Let's model them more. Let's pick up the phone in 3 rings. I remember working for OTC in Telstra, now part of Telstra. We were trained to pick up the phone after 3 rings, because that shows customer. In the past, they just used to ring out. Then we were trained to actually answer the phone. So the problem has stayed the same. How are we going to deliver solutions to our customer? Oh, sorry, who was that? Sorry, that was the intelligence of my phone.
Working on that.
No, you're not. Hang on, be quiet. Type Siri.
So helpful is technology, isn't it?
It's actually trying to intervene here. I wasn't even talking to it, and look, funny enough, it's even on silent and interferes. Never mind. So the problem has stayed the same. The solutions have changed as technology has evolved. And the one thing I think that we are realizing is that the thing that has to change above all is ourselves. What we have to change is our mindset to be innovative. And sometimes the worst thing we have going for us is the fact that we were successful in the past, and we try to bring the past forward. And so therefore, that's the problem. We need to unshackle the past and think innovatively. And that's, I think, something that we've been trying to do over many decades. And I think we're getting better. We're realizing the power, if you like, of our people.
Awesome. Great, we've got some great questions coming through. So I just want to turn our attention there. Steve Pettigrew's asked, is there an argument to say that cybersecurity will evolve into a function of autonomous networking? What are your reflections around, how we try and get ahead of those crimes? I couldn't believe it when you first gave that statistic, that it's the third largest economy behind the US and China, the third largest, and also bigger than, the impact of all these natural disasters, because natural disasters, I mean, we've been through some, here recently in New Zealand, and they just feel so overwhelming. And yet, we've got to watch out for these criminals. Anyway, what are your reflections?
Absolutely. I think that the technology will become immersed inside autonomous networks. But let me just make one point. Think of cyber crime and these guys as the virus, like COVID. It is constantly evolving, absolutely evolving, and they're reinventing themselves. And they've, in fact, with the power of technology, you would think you're talking to your bank manager, because it looks like the bank manager. It sounds like even the call comes from them. From your in my case, the Commonwealth Bank. They're constantly evolving, so the trick is to stay one step ahead. And to stay one step ahead, there are many things that make cybersecurity effective. And technology is just one bit of it. The other bit is the rest. It's education, it's the people, it's the process. For example, the Commonwealth Bank is the first bank in Australia, and the others are following and ultimately follow, to say whenever you do a transfer of money, here is the account number. How about you check the account name? No, they don't need to check the account name. More efficient so they're sending money to an account number, not even checking the account name. Now, in Sweden and other countries around the world, they started doing that, reduced, if you like, the scams by about 30%, purely by doing a simple process change that to most of us sounds obvious. But to people who are basically think that the digital world is different from the physical world, they think that a password is enough, sending the account name is enough. It is not enough. We've been outwitted by the bad guys and the bad actors. We need to leapfrog them and stay one step ahead of them. And that means things like biometrics, and using biometrics to say hello, because they now can crack the password very easily. So there's a whole bunch of technology changes that need to be continually improved, but there's a lot of changes in education, in process, in structure. I would advise you review the NIST CSF cybersecurity framework. It actually explains all of this very beautifully, and it's becoming a standard, right, in addition to ISO 27001. Go ahead, sir.
No. Look, I agree, and it's. I think that we do need to take some personal ownership around how we protect ourselves. I think there is a burden on us to become more shall we say, educated around how the potential threats, and also, it's interesting thinking about what burden we put on the operators. And even as we were preparing for this presentation, I was thinking about people who build roads, and we get them to fix potholes so that they, don't damage our cars. But if someone, robs a bank or speeds, do we hold the Transport Authority accountable for that? What do we do? It's a complex thing. Anyway, let's just keep on working through. We've got some wonderful questions coming through. Dale Roberts, how do you convince telcos to collaborate in a world where they think they need to own everything? We have been preaching collaboration in the IT space, but companies keep trying to do it all on their own. So, fantastic question from Dale. Thank you. What are your reflections, Tony, on what you see?
I think it takes me back, I guess, to one of the slides I showed you before, which I was quite an eye-opener to see the CEO of a telco say that we are an arrogant, broken company. That in fact, this is the heritage of us coming out of a government entity. The post and communication was in the past was under a government bureaucracy, and only a few decades ago in many countries it was turned into a private company. We have that, if you like, that culture to unshackle with, and we're doing really well. And one of the honest feedback from most people in this presentation is that they realize that the future lies in collaboration, in open APIs. No single entity can own everything. It's too dangerous for the global economy to create that. It's anti-competitive, and it creates a lot of issues and problems. And I think there's humility now coming through in many of these presentations. These presentations were done by CEOs of telcos. And they were saying, let's say the Axiata CEO got on stage and said, we want to work with you. We want to collaborate with you because we know that we're not the subject matter experts in that problem, but you may be, or you may be an innovator that can work on that problem. And we want to work with your innovation and promote that with what we've got and the investments we've made. And the danger is, of course, that those investments can be a little bit of a dud. You saw the valuation when it comes to ServCos. You know, they're not getting the valuations that they expect for the investments they've made and the criticality of what they deliver. So now I think it is an industry that is, as you saw that in one of the few first slides, that half of the CEOs in Europe of telco companies believe that they will be out of business. They will be out of business in 10 years unless they change. And they know that there's a call to actions to change. And I think you'll find them a lot more conducive in collaborations moving forward. Yeah,
no, I think I really appreciate that. And I think, substance to that is building that open connection. You made an interesting comment earlier, change is a necessity for success, but success is the enemy of change. And I do wonder about the innovator's dilemma and how do you abandon those things which have served your shareholders and so on. Is the market going to reward our telcos as they go to techcos? How do we make sure that that's true? Okay, we've got another great question here. I was thinking about taking this on myself. Your slide on TM Forum, global transformation failures from an anonymous attendee. How do you think New Zealand telcos align with the slide? So this is a beautiful slide you've got on why digital transformations failed. And I think it's probably helpful for these kind of questions to go back. There's a book I read a few years ago by a guy called Donald Keogh, who was the chair of Coca-Cola, and it's called The 10 Commandments for Business Failure. And in the preceding comments, it says, I couldn't guarantee anything that would necessarily make your business successful, but I can guarantee if you do these 10 things, you'll definitely fail. 10 Commandments of Business Failure. And I think that reflecting on the TM Forum, what typically, undermines digital transformation projects, I think actually all players, all of our operators, everyone in our market faces these challenges because we've got, humans involved and the world is dynamic. So I think that if any of the telcos in New Zealand would be on this call, I'm not sure if they've attended, they would all reflect, man, I wish we could have done a much better job. And I think that's continuous change. So I'll let you off the hook on that one. Let's move on to the next one. AI, ChatGPT versus people. Any insights on how do we solve for the inherent, social problems, social challenges? What are your reflections on ethics and generative AI?
No, it is an excellent question. I think it is like fire. When we discovered fire and applied it to cooking our meals and to keeping light inside our caves. There was also the flip side of that we can get really badly burned if we don't manage it very well. So this is no different to all of the innovations that we've done over the history of mankind on this planet. We have to take it very carefully. It's a two-edged sword. And what I did as soon as they launched it, I'm paying the $40 a month to use it, so I can understand it, so I can see how it works. And do you realize that it is a little window open on my laptop, on my PC environment here every day, because it has an incredible ability to empower me about facts, and then I make conclusions from those facts. It actually accelerates my ability to do research. But it is dangerous if that information is wrong, if that information is false, it could mislead me. So I have to stay alert so I don't get burnt. I have to stay alert. And I think it's something that needs to be regulated. And there's a lot of work in the EU now, and I can send you some information on that, on how that is being regulated. And they've at least identified that you can get badly burned with it. And they've said you need to put boundaries around it, and you need to put safeguards. And there's a lot of, discussion about how to do that. But it is an important topic to cover. And it is, a wheel. It's the wheel of our century. You can crash with the wheel as well if you're not careful, right?
No, exactly. And I kind of think, the most exciting thing about generative AI, and to your earlier comment, just so everyone knows, ChatGPT, so the concept of generative AI and large language models have been around for some time. It's just that ChatGPT as a manifestation of that has really got everyone's, excitement. And the thing I find so exciting about it is that it becomes, it really rewards good questions. And a current topical question in our household at the moment, I've got a daughter who's got a birthday coming up. And, instead of thinking about, Googling birthday presents, I can say, look, I've got a daughter, she likes cooking, she's into a bit of exercise, she's into healthy eating and likes these kind of clothes. Can you suggest, 10 different birthday ideas that I might be able to go and buy an interesting present for her? And then GPT goes away and says, well, here's 10 ideas. And I think the value of that return comes on, the quality of the question. So I would be, absolutely encouraging everyone to have a connection and an interaction with it. But I hear from one of my colleagues that if you're an arts major, then you're going to be asking quite rich, interesting questions, which will really enable this large language model to pick up on, how to be really, really the most value to you. And I think that's, super exciting. And yes, I think the ethics of that will continue to evolve.
Let me say to add to your example, sorry, Jeremy, to add to your example, my very first use of ChatGPT was Valentine's Day. We've been married 30 years. I had a little bit of a, writer's block, and I said, wow, I wonder what ChatGPT will say to my wife. And I described me and my wife and everything, and it came back with 2-3 sentences that was just amazing. I said, okay, by the way, don't tell my wife this. I wrote them down in a card. And I tell you, that card stayed there on the mantelpiece for about 3 weeks. In the past, it used to be thrown away, but I feel a bit guilty. But there you go. It can empower us if we're careful. Okay.
I promise, your secret's safe with us and the other 70
people. Don't tell anyone.
And the recordings. Craig, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I think we've kind of got 8 minutes. Let's take one more question and then we'll hand back to you. Goodness, we've got some great ones to choose from. We'll go for the one that got the most votes. Any discussions or insights regarding developing plans regarding network resilience for future weather events? As you know, Tony, we've had these catastrophic weather events, and interesting to see operators talking about 100% coverage. Obviously, satellite will not be impacted by weather. I mean, you'll still need power, you'll still need some of those things. But what are your reflections of what have you come across around any discussion around technology or network resilience, shall we say, to keep people connected when they need to?
No, it's a very good question to end on, because it's all about global warming and the effects of that to climate. And if you look at topic 4, the environmental, social, and governance, the ESG, a lot of conversations about how we can take accountability for the contributing to the problem, but more importantly, how do we mitigate the risk of global warming and how to mitigate the risk of floods. For example, there was one example of a house built on four stilts that actually, and from Vietnam, that actually goes up like a boat as the flood plains increases in size. So that was, even if it's 5-10 minutes, what you have is the whole house goes up, and it goes up on these four posts on the end of. So a lot of risk mitigation ideas and innovation, and that in particular is what can be collaborated between the telco and the wider digital economy players, and to see how do we make things more resilient. Now, there's a lot of thinking now, and therefore there's a lot of opportunity to create new companies that specialize in making the technology climate resilient, because it's not a question of whether or not, unfortunately, and it's a question of how do we mitigate it. A lot of people are now resigned to the fact that there's very little we could do but to try to survive with our ingenuity.
Wow, fantastic. Well, look, Tony, again, thank you so much. I'm always inspired by your energy and your ability to just dance across our whole industry. I'm looking forward to, let's run another one of these in 6 months' time and see what's changed in the meantime. Craig, I'd like to hand back to you, please.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Jeremy. And look, amazing presentation, Tony. I'm fortunate because I have the slide pack, obviously, because we got to see through it beforehand. Just a couple of things. Tony offered that if you wanted further information, particularly details around a particular presentation, drop me a note, and I'll work that through with Tony. Secondly, also there's a couple of questions left that are really interesting. So what I'm going to do is after the webinar, I'll download them and I'm going to send them through to Tony and ask him to not use ChatGPT, but answer them on his own, and send them back. And we might chuck them in the next week's newsletter and help people know that that's the sort of thing we talked about. I'd like to just do a couple of thank yous. Thank you, Tech Mahindra, for being part of this, to Jeremy and Tony. We're working with Jeremy and Tech Mahindra on a series of webinars this year, so it's great to have them involved. The three themes that you picked up, Tony, you said were being talked about: climate sustainability, cybersecurity, and cloud. Our first After 5 for this year is in Auckland at the end of May. It'll come out today for registration, but it is about cloud, hosted by Vector Fiber, but the keynote speaker is AWS. So that last question about becoming cloud partners is great to be involved in that. And I'm going to go and look at that book. What was it? 10 Commandments of Business Failure? Something like that?
Yes, Don Keogh.
Cool, thank you. But otherwise, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being with us over lunch. And we look forward to seeing you again. And absolutely, the last question there, we'll let you know how to access the recording of the session. So thanks, Jeremy and Tony, and Matiwa, everybody else.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Be well.
Everyone, bye-bye.